Update: boss is pretending I never gave notice. Original post: I gave my 2 weeks notice last Tuesday. Handed the letter directly to my manager, had a short, straightforward conversation about transition plans, and figured that was the end of it. I've left jobs before and it's always been routine. Give notice, tie up loose ends, move on. Simple. Except this time, my manager is acting like it never happened. She's still assigning me projects that go well into next month, still putting me on a schedule for meetings 3 weeks away, and even asked me yesterday to order new business cards with my name on them. When I reminded her I was leaving, she brushed it off with a casual, "We'll see about that," and walked away. For context, I work in accounts payable at a small company. It's not glamorous, and it's certainly not something that requires years of specialized training. Anyone with basic bookkeeping skills and a couple weeks of practice could pick it up. But my manager keeps making comments like, "You can't just abandon us during busy season," and "We invested so much in training you." Training me to use QuickBooks 2 years ago? The strangest part came today. She actually scheduled me for a performance review in mid-November. I told her flat out, I won't be here then. She looked at me with genuine confusion and said, "What are you talking about? You never said anything about leaving." I was stunned. I literally handed her a signed resignation letter last week. I even have proof. I snapped a photo on my phone of me physically handing it to her. Yet she's acting like none of it ever happened. I don't know if this is denial manipulation or something else entirely, but it's bizarre. It's not like I'm some irreplaceable superstar who's impossible to replace. I process invoices, pay vendors, and balance accounts. It's important work, sure, but it's also standard stuff. People come and go all the time in this industry. As far as I'm concerned, my last day is still this Friday. I'm starting my new job Monday, whether she accepts my resignation or not. I'm debating whether to send another letter, forward a copy to HR, or just stop showing up and let her deal with the fallout. Has anyone else dealt with a boss who flat out refuses to acknowledge a resignation? This is hands down the weirdest work situation I've ever been in, and I honestly don't know if she really thinks she can stop me from leaving or if she's just pretending for her own peace of mind. Now for the top comments before reading the update. Whether they chose to acknowledge it or not, they'll soon be without you and they'd be smart to plan for such. Very odd indeed. Choosing to bury their heads in the sand is a bold move that will not benefit anyone. And do not share where you will be going. Sabotage has happened to many. Definitely not telling them where I'm going. Already learned that lesson from past jobs. Guess they're planning for you to haunt the office forever. Laughing out loud. I've had some bosses and co-workers that deserve a good haunting. Isn't that like when everything bad you predicted in your exit interview comes true? Pretty much. All those red flags I ignored are coming back to bite them now. Send a copy to HR and tell them when you submitted it to your boss. CC the boss manager too. Sounds like your boss isn't following protocol and will say you don't give notice. Leave as planned. I'll CC HR and her manager when I send the follow-up. Thanks. Now for the update. Thanks everyone for all the advice and support. You were all right about documenting everything and covering my bases. I sent a follow-up email to HR and CC'd my boss and her manager with a copy of my resignation letter and the photo I took of myself handing it to her. I also included screenshots with timestamps like some of you suggested. Got a call from HR within an hour. Turns out this isn't the first time she's pulled this stunt. Apparently, she did the same thing to someone else last year. They're handling it internally and confirmed my last day is a Friday as originally planned. My boss finally acknowledged my resignation today, though she acted like she was doing me a huge favor by accepting it. Whatever, I'm out of here in 2 days and starting fresh somewhere that actually operates in reality. Thanks again for helping me navigate this insanity. Next story. Boss keeps trying to reach out for help even a month after my resignation. I worked in retail operations, specifically on the team responsible for handling product displays and display tags. To give some perspective, we were dealing with around 5,000 products per store across 40 stores. It was a high-volume, repetitive process, but for more than 13 years, the workflow was simple and efficient. We'd handle everything through Excel, pass it along to the vendor, and that was it. Done and dusted. Then earlier this year, the design team decided they wanted to modernize the process. They rolled out a new, supposedly fancy layout system for the tags. In theory, it was meant to look sleek and professional, but in practice, it was slower, more expensive, and incredibly frustrating. The vendors who had to actually work with the system absolutely hated it. Most of them flat out refused to deal with the new design. The handful who were willing to do it quoted rates that went up to nearly $3 per tag. When you're talking about thousands of products across dozens of stores, that number isn't just high, it's astronomical. I decided to see if there was a workaround. I spent 3 days teaching myself InDesign's import and data merge tools. I'd never touched the program before, but I was determined to figure it out because I knew the costs would sink us if we didn't. After a lot of trial and error, I cracked the workflow. With the process I built, we could generate the same tags for about 7 cents each instead of $3. The difference in cost savings was massive, tens of thousands of dollars over the course of a year. Naturally, I told my manager about the system I developed and said we should train other people on the team to use it. My reasoning was straightforward. If I was ever out or left the company, they'd be stuck if I was the only person who knew how to run it. I didn't want to become a single point of failure. But instead of seeing the value in what I'd created, my manager, who was rude, insecure, and generally incompetent, snapped at me. Their response? "This is literally the only job you do. Are you trying to dump it on others too?" That told me everything I needed to know about how little they valued the work or the savings I had delivered. A few weeks later in July, I came down with a serious illness and had to take 3 weeks off. When I returned, still not fully recovered, my manager immediately lit into me over a supposed mistake in the tag exports. The issue was so tiny it was laughable, and in reality, it turned out to be their own misunderstanding. But instead of admitting that, they screamed at me in front of others as if I'd failed catastrophically. That was the breaking point. I quit on the spot. I didn't raise my voice, didn't make a scene, just calmly walked out. I followed up with an email to both HR and the CEO, making it clear that my manager's behavior was the direct reason I was resigning. My last official day was August 1st. Since then, I've received over 17 calls and texts from different people at the company, all essentially begging me to explain how to export the tags. The exact thing I warned them about had come true. No one else knew how to run the process I built. Every time I see one of those messages, I can't help but shake my head. They had the opportunity to train others and make it sustainable, but my manager's ego wouldn't allow it. Now I'm just waiting for my final settlement on the 15th. Once that money clears, I plan to block every single number tied to that circus. They can scramble on their own. It's no longer my problem. You have no responsibility to answer them at all. I hope you've been ignoring them completely. It's not your job to train them if you don't work for them. It's not your job to teach them how to do their own job. You quit, live your life, and move on. Ignore them. The mention of your final check made no sense. If they're not paying you, you owe them nothing. Come up with a contract, high pay for you, and just reply if they want to hire you. Not hourly, upfront amount for X amount of work. Bingo. Basically an FU amount. You'd hate to do it, but for X dollars you would conveniently forget you hate it. Set up a contract. Determine how long you would need, per person needing to be taught. Round up to the nearest 10 hours. If you guess you'll need 13 hours, round up to 20 and charge X per hour, where X is at least 4 times your hourly pay, padded with INA charge, a-hole tax, etc., to end up being 6 times your previous hourly wage. Payment in full, in advance, and no refund possible, unless you get sick or have to cancel due to acts of God or something. The INA charge equals irritation and aggravation for dealing with the abusive people there. Also, no one should feel bad for charging $200 an hour for this. This is a specialized skill, and it is worth that amount of money, especially if they are panicking this much. Signed, a graphic designer who regularly charges corporate clients $200 plus an hour. Next story. Got laid off, then poached their biggest client. Oops. 3 months ago, my company announced a restructuring. No warning signs, no whispers in the hallways, just a Friday afternoon meeting where half the marketing department, including me, was told our positions were eliminated effective immediately. I'd spent the last 2 years managing their largest account, a regional restaurant chain worth about $200,000 annually. It wasn't just another client on the roster. I had built that relationship from scratch, earned the trust of their marketing director, and understood their brand better than most people inside their own company. It was my pride and joy project, and I had every intention of continuing to grow it. But apparently, the higher-ups didn't share that view. During my exit interview, HR blandly reassured me that they would redistribute my responsibilities and that the company would be fine without me. Let me tell you, nothing makes you feel more disposable than being told your biggest achievements can just be handed off like a stack of papers. I didn't sit around sulking, though. I started freelancing to cover bills while I looked for something permanent. About 6 weeks later, out of nowhere, I get a message on LinkedIn. It was from the marketing director of that same restaurant chain. She didn't mince words. The new person handling their account had completely botched a major campaign launch. The demographics were wrong, the creative was off-brand, deadlines were missed, and the entire rollout was a mess. Their frustration was clear, and she wanted to know if I was interested in stepping in as a freelancer since they were already exploring other options. It didn't take much convincing. I knew their business inside and out, and I was confident I could deliver better results than anyone they'd throw at the account. Within a week, I signed a contract directly with them, this time for $300,000 annually. That's more than they'd been paying my old company, but I'm now handling everything end-to-end: strategy, creative, and media buying. They saw the value in working with someone who actually understands them. The best part? Last week, my former boss called me in a bit of a panic. He asked if I knew why they lost their biggest client. I played dumb and said, no idea. Maybe they should have kept someone who actually understood the account. The silence on the other end of the call was priceless. And it doesn't stop there. In the last 2 weeks, 2 more of my former company's clients have reached out asking about my services. Word travels fast in our industry, especially when campaigns crash and burn. Meanwhile, I hear they're scrambling to hire 3 new people to try to cover the work I was doing alone. Here's the lesson. Sometimes you don't realize your own value until someone else shoves you out the door. Getting laid off felt devastating in the moment, but it turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to my career. Now for the comments. Honestly, this is why I always tell people to document everything and keep good relationships with clients. Companies love to act like they're doing you a favor until they realize you were the one actually holding things together. The fact that your replacement bombed so spectacularly just proves you were worth way more than they were paying you. I kept all my client contacts and documentation. It made the transition seamless when they came knocking. This is basically corporate karma at its finest. After 10 years in the game, I've seen this play out so many times. Companies think people are replaceable until they realize how much institutional knowledge walks out the door. The fact that you're now making more as a freelancer while they're scrambling is just chef's kiss. Exactly. They don't realize how much walks out the door until it's gone. Their scrambling now is just confirmation I was worth more than they paid. And now they're probably trying to hire 2 to 3 people to do what you were doing alone. Classic move: cut costs by getting rid of the person who actually knew what they were doing, then spend way more trying to fix the mess. I got laid off from a sales job a bunch of years ago. 2 years later, I got a job on the client side of my industry. The guy who got my job came into my office to discuss opportunities. I knew him a bit from the industry. Good dude. I told him I'm not a spiteful person. I know he has a job to do, but he should probably focus on other clients. He pushed back a bit, and I told him to tell his boss I won't purchase a freaking thing from them, and if they bother anyone who works for me, I'll bury them to my fellow clients. It felt wonderful. Screw 'em, I still hold a grudge. Last story. My boss is trying to punish me for using legally protected sick leave. I work at a preschool in Washington State, where paid sick leave is legally protected. My employer has a blackout days policy, where they say staff can't call out sick on certain days unless they bring a doctor's note proving the reason they called out is due to a contagious illness. If that policy sounds illegal, you are so right. The other problem? They've been abusing it anyway. 5 out of the last 6 weeks were blackout weeks. And this week plus the next 3 weeks are also blackout. Basically, half the calendar is you can't be sick. On Monday, I used 1 day of accrued sick leave. HR emailed me saying it was unexcused and demanded a doctor's note. As I mentioned, that's an illegal policy. Washington state law only allows documentation requests after 3+ consecutive days. When I pushed back and cited the law, they made it personal. First, it's an unexcused absence, so I told them my absence is by law excused. Then, all of a sudden, we have concerns about your attendance and you have a documented history of misuse. I don't. I've never had a warning. They dragged up absences from last winter when I was so sick I had shaking fevers. I went to the doctor, provided a note, and my director literally told me it was justified. Now they're trying to retroactively reclassify those days as misuse to justify punishing me because it was when I first started and didn't have any PTO saved up. Now suddenly it's an issue, and they say my annual review will reflect my excessive absences. That's classic freaking retaliation, plain and simple. Other co-workers who've stood up to this policy have had their vacation time taken away or been put on PIPS. It's a clear pattern of intimidation. At this point, I've gone full malicious compliance. You want a doctor's note? Fine. My doctor was so pissed on my behalf. She literally wrote HIPAA protections into my note and said I would need multiple intermittent days off and might even be late to work or have to leave early a few times. And no, they can't ask why. I'm not playing their illegal games. I'm documenting everything, filing with labor and industries, and then I'm taking it to the freaking board. I'm just so angry and hurt. I've been accused of lying and cheating and abusing leave when all I did was get sick in a goddamned preschool. This blackout policy is BS and abusive and exploitative, and the worst part is it's still one of the best preschools I've ever worked at. I'm so tired. Do yourself a favor and contact an employee rights attorney. Document everything and do not tell anyone you're speaking to a lawyer. I really don't have any money for an attorney. A lot of labor attorneys work on contingency, so you don't owe them anything unless you win your case. Be sure to get confirmation of that in writing from the attorney's office, of course, but don't just assume you can't get a lawyer. You could also check for attorneys doing pro bono work. Most state bars require or heavily encourage a certain amount of pro bono work from lawyers practicing in said state. Sounds like you've got this in writing. Email. Contact Labor and Industries. They will help you. I showed this to my friend in HR at another company, and she said, I'm amazed they're putting this all in writing because they broke multiple laws in the email chain. I kept expecting them to call me into a meeting to intimidate me or something, but they were just so overconfident. You can tell they've done this before. I'm so happy you're standing up for yourself and your fellow coworkers. I'm 16 weeks pregnant and just bawling my eyes out at this predicament. We have a pregnant coworker, and they've been horrible to her too. I've noticed they're the meanest to people who stand up to them, which is classic bully behavior.